Okay, here we go. So we'll come back to that. So skills for exploring non-effective content, thoughts, narratives, and stories. Okay, so as we go, so helping skills in this chapter, in chapter 7, if you guys are reading in that book, um, this chapter has restatements, summaries, then we get into questions, right? So open questions. So these are just more than head nodding and things like that. So we got open questions and closed questions, right? So, and probing too. Okay. So the rationale for these skills that we have is for clients that who are there that need to reflect and have a clearer understanding of the thoughts that they're bringing into the room. It was funny because um, just a lot going on in my own life, right? And there's school and work and teaching and just all kinds of stuff all at the same time. And so it's like sometimes feelings of being overwhelmed, and then I have one-on-ones with my boss. So I go in there, who's Jeff, you guys know him. So I go in there and so we just kind of say, well, what are things that are happening and all that stuff too. And then, I was kind of feeling overwhelmed at one point, and we kind of hit on something of, the why, right? So why my thoughts or, or that. And so once that is over, the energy that you get from the understanding that you have from your own thoughts or emotions or whatever, it's awesome just to see how their countenance changes, how their attitudes and feelings and thoughts change too. It's awesome. So by explaining their stories to you, the helper, right, they often hear themselves in a new way. So what do you think that means? Let me open that up a little bit. What do you think that means when it says explaining their own stories to you, it opens up a whole new world for them? What's that mean?
I think sometimes they haven't, at least it's possible they've never even said there's that parts of their story out loud before.
Yeah.
You may be the first person that's ever heard what this thought or this event that happened to them or whatever. So it's insightful for them to hear it back. And sometimes when you hear your own words back, you can see that they weren't rational or they weren't it just wasn't what you thought it was when you hear it.
Yes, yeah, or yeah, or maybe you've had emotions about it and now you're putting words to those emotions too. Just exactly what Cindy's saying. I love that. Thank you. Um, yeah, when it kind of comes out of our mouth, it becomes real. And then another thing is that's why I like having people journal too. So there's ways that we learn, right? So journaling gets things out of us too, and we put it on paper and it makes it real for us, right? Good job. Okay, and then the next is differences among exploring, ruminating, and storytelling. So there's differences among those things, right? So the first one is restatements. Okay, so a restatement is a repeating or paraphrasing, which you guys have been doing, right, of the non-effective content or meaning of the client's statements, right? So rephrasing it back to or paraphrasing it or summarizing is another word that we'll get to. Um, the content that they just said to you. So saying it back to them, and maybe if even kind of in a different way, if that makes sense to them. Not so it's not the exact same words, but maybe in a way that adds a different meaning to it. So maybe it contains fewer but similar words. It's kind of what we just said, or more concrete and clear than the client statement. So maybe they just said all of these words out there, and then you're taking, remember when I call them handles or whatever? Those handles are emotions or thought words or whatever that you're taking, and maybe you're grabbing all of those words that they're saying and you're putting it back in your paraphrasing, okay? Or your summary back to them. They can be phrased tentatively or directly, and then refer to things that the client just said or things that the client said earlier in the session treatment. So then you're kind of rounding the whole session up in this one summary back to them, saying, so before you were saying this, and maybe their emotions and thoughts have changed during that time. So you're bringing those into them. So a summary, just kind of what we were saying, is a type of restatement that ties together several ideas. So maybe it's the whole session, and it could be like, maybe it's not just the whole session, maybe it's their whole, all of the sessions combined into one goal, right? So it's tying together several ideas or picks out of the highlights and general themes of the context the content that they had just expressed to you. So you're picking out the highlights, you're picking out the main themes, you're picking out the handles, all of those important words, and repeating them back to them so that it gives them the meaning, but it also puts them in a smaller box, if you will, right? And it's not so spread out like they just told you many, many, many things over 50 minutes. Well, let's say 40 minutes. And the other 10 minutes, you're left packing it all together and making meaning out of everything that you just talked about, so that you have direction. That's the most important. So, and this may happen, and this is not a bad thing, and you want to get better at it or whatever, but you may feel more scattered when they're leaving than when they got in, right? But these paraphrasing, summarizing, all of those things are meant to tie things together so it doesn't feel that way. Does that make sense? Okay. Summaries are useful when clients have finished talking about particular issues, and they're very useful at the end of the session or at the beginning of the next session. Okay, so you summarized what we went through last week. That's important because we want to make sure that the goals that we set are still the same goals that they are saying important to them, or are there new ones? And we don't want a new one every week, per se, because we want to make sure that we're tying together all the other goals that they set. But something may come up that's more urgent, and it may that needs to be taken care of, and it may tie back to the other goals, if that makes sense. Okay, restatements and summaries. Why do we do them, right? So helpers need to be mirrors and sounding boards to their clients so that they can hear what they've said back to them without judgment. So Carl Rogers says that's part of what he says. So they can hear back to them what they just said without any judgment, no tone of judgment or anything, okay? So this can enable clients to clarify, explore more things and more thoroughly, and think about aspects that they have not previously considered. So that's the thing, is when we're processing, we want them to understand some things that, or bring to light things that, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? Type of thing, so that they new thoughts are coming in, and what that do is it's giving new meaning to those emotions or thoughts that they have. Helpers can play an active role in order to restate the essence and key components of that client's message. So you can play an active role in this, okay? And then it orients the client to what they need to talk about next. So that's what I was saying earlier, is like, what's the direction that we need to go? So summarizing and restating things can put it into perspective so that we have a direction. So if you ever feel you're losing focus or whatever, try some summaries and restatements so that it brings the whole discussion back to what I've heard, and then they can say, Oh, and this, or forget about that part. Here's the most important part of that. Okay. Okay. Here's what restatement starters sound like, right? I hear you saying, so this is what I hear you saying. After out of all of that, here is what I heard you say. And then that's active listening, right? So we're saying, it's more or less saying, did I get that right? This is what I heard. Is that what I should be getting out of what you just said? Okay. Another one's, it's like, it sounds as though, and then you can say your piece. You're saying that. So, what you seem to be saying is, so see all of these starters that you have here. What it are is they're clarifying. So we're clarifying, saying, this is what I heard you say. Did I get that right? Okay. Yeah. So I like this last one here. I'm not sure I got that completely. Let me try to summarize and see if I got that. So to me, what you're kind of saying is, wow, that was a lot there that you just gave me. And I need to make sure that out of all of that stuff, that information you just gave me, that I'm picking the right things out of it. So you're saying that that's a nice way of saying it, right? Okay. Restatement tips. Capture the cutting edge, the part that is most salient, seems unresolved, and what the client is most uncertain about. What is the most important thing that what pertains to the goals? And that's what you're picking out. What is the client most confused about? And let's add clarification to it. Attend to what the client focuses on most. That's really good right there. What kind of keywords do they keep saying, and repeat back those keywords to them? You keep saying this, or you can say it in a different way, but what you're really saying is, you keep saying this, so that must be important. You keep saying this word, and to me, that word means X, so that must be important to you. I'm wondering what that means to you. I'm wondering how that affects you, whatever the direction is, right? So what the client seems to have the most involvement in talking about, subject, and it could be person, could be, what are they most talking about? And when they do bring up a person, how are they talking about that person? Okay. What the client seems to have questions and conflicts about, and what is left unresolved in their life or in these discussions that you have. What's being left unresolved? Let's resolve those. So restatement tips: keep the focus on the client and the client's thoughts, of course. Keep these restatements short. Why we want to keep them short, you think? Why we want to keep those restatements short?
We don't want it to be about us. We want it to be about what they have to say in our session.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And also keeping them short, if we go on a tangent, it takes a focus off what we're talking about too, or they could get unfocused. So if we're getting them to be focused, we want to keep it short so it keeps them focused and involved. And using our helping skills, nodding, all of those things. See, just to keep them going along those lines of keeping them focused. Nothing harder than in today's world, because our focus is so short now. I remember growing up as a kid, all these things that we had, our focus was a lot more than it is now. I even know my own, uh, I can even see it in myself because of technology and the microwave society or whatever, that my focus span or whatever is not as long as it used to be. But so that's something I have to work on and be self-aware of it too. Okay, so it's okay if the restatement is wrong. right? As long as it's given empathetically, empathically, or whatever, and without judgment. So no judgment back. Of course, you're not going to do that. But it's okay if it's wrong because they'll correct it. And maybe it's not wrong, but maybe it's their perception at the time of what's going on. Okay. There's been many times I've said something, I'm like, man, it sounds like they're going down this path. And then I say something and they go, no, it's this or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so we go down. And then later on, it does go back, goes to that where the direction we were heading. But they just weren't either A, ready for it, or their perception was different. Right. Okay. How about this? So I want to hear your thoughts. What are your concerns about restating a client's statements back to them? Any concerns?
Doug, I needed to hear that last one because my biggest concern was getting it wrong, especially, you know, in your personal relationships, like with my wife. It happens all the time. And I'm like,
You're
I'm
wrong.
just trying to understand, honest. I'm not trying to judge, but it comes across that way. You know, you're not even listening to me. Yeah. I don't want to get that in the client, but it's a different role, so I get it. So I needed to see that.
You know what? Maybe we can talk about this offline or something sometime, but you know, and it could be approach too. The way, you know, you get if you guys have been married for a long time and we're into this cycle of how we approach, maybe those cycles need to be broken just a little bit and approached in a different way. I don't know. I'm just throwing out some things.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
I think for me, Doug, it's sometimes thinking about the client, thinking that I'm kind of saying that they are not being clear. If I'm restating and it's kind of really close to what they said, in my mind, they could think, yeah, I just said that. Are you not paying attention? Why are you are you telling the same thing to me?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It feels like a little bit weird because it's not a conversation that is the way that we do usually. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Erica, that's great. So, and I think that was exactly kind of what Charlie was saying too. So, and let me put it in this way. It's like, when you repeat things back to them, so maybe it's in the way that we do it too. So you can say, I mean, and I think, you know, let's go back to some of those statements, right? So what I hear you saying is, and then you can say at the end of that, because this is like an active listening. So this is, you know, in active listening, this is exactly what you would say to somebody. I hear you saying, and then you say, did I get that right? Is that correct? So am I understanding you correctly? Or this is my perception of what you said, whatever it is. So this is what I got out of this dialogue. And then it gives them room to say, oh, well, you know, it's almost like, well, thank you for listening. You're listening. I appreciate that because you got those words right, but it's not my perception of. Does that make sense? So to me, if you
Yeah,
repeat
it
back
does.
to me, it's like I get what you're saying, but I think if we come at it in a way of, hey, I'm coming at this in a way of clarification, just so that because I know these words, you would not have said these words if they weren't important to you. So I just want to clarify to make sure that I got them right because they are important to me too. So if you approach it like that, does that make sense? And I'm not saying you're not approaching it that way.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I understand what you're saying, but if we come at it with an attitude of,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I
Thank you.
I just
Yeah.
I just I just added the word like I asked them like, do you mind if I repeat what I hear from you right now
Oh,
so
that's great.
I could understand? So
Oh,
I
that's
think that was
nice.
helpful too. And yeah, I just asked like, do you mind if I repeat the statement that you just said? And that was really helpful because
thank you.
then the client was like, oh, okay, I said that. And it was kind of like an aha moment for them too, to realize that they said
Uh-huh.
the statement.
That's perfect. I
Uh-huh.
was just going that direction too. Saying because okay, they say it come out of your mouth, but then when they hear it come out of your mouth, and maybe even the same words, they go, "Well, that sounds terrible," or "That sounds or wow, I shouldn't have that perception," all right, those types of things. So even hearing it come from somebody else's mouth, it's like going, "Wow, no wonder my friend called me crazy," or whatever it was, whatever it was. So yeah, so it's clarifying. Yeah, good job. Any other thoughts?
Okay, that actually helps me a lot because my biggest concern wasn't so much getting it wrong, but it's like knowing myself, I can get arrogant and and want to assume that I'm going to be right as a form of moral or intellectual superiority. So it's like not approaching it from okay, this is what you're telling me, kind of trying to get to everything that's wrong with them, but rather okay, this is what I'm hearing. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, I think what you guys just talked about helped me out a lot in that regard.
That's good. Yeah. Good job. I love you guys' feedback. You guys are good. I'd pick you all as a counselor any day. Okay, so here's some of the difficulties in restating. So this is exactly what you guys were saying, right? So it could feel awkward saying it back to them. It's like, yes, that's exactly what I just said. Aren't you listening to me? That type of thing. And if you do it in a way, just like we were saying, clarifying. So feeling like you are not doing anything but repeating back to them what they're saying, right? But there's a method to this, a method to the madness of helping skills. If you get these helping skills down and you got them good, you'll never get stuck in counseling. Okay, you'll never get stuck. Worrying that the clients will feel annoyed. Sounding like parrots by using the same format repeatedly, but just switch it up, right? Do it in a different way, practice okay, do that. Practice paraphrasing and summarizing in many different ways so that when you do it, you can do it differently each time so it's not the same over and over and over again. Sounding robotic. Okay. Yeah. I get it. You don't want to sound like that, but man, these helping skills are the most important things you'll learn on your journey right now. Okay. Open questions and probes for thoughts. Okay. Open questions. Ask clients to clarify or explore their thoughts. That's what open questions do. Do not have a right answer in mind and do not purposely limit the nature of your client's responses. Because I know I've said this to you before is I direct people sometimes, but you don't want to over direct them because then you're leading them. It's like, if you ever watch a good lawyer in, a trial or something like that, it's leading. And so that's one of the objections that you can put that one of the other lawyers can object to is leading, meaning you're leading them to the answer. And so the only way that they can answer your question is by saying it this way. Does that make sense? So that's so in a courtroom, the judge will say, yeah, sustained, you're leading them, right? Okay. So just being careful or cognizant of that. So open questions, probes for thoughts. It encourages clients to talk longer and more deeply. So along with open questions comes all your other helping skills, head nods, encouragers, minimal encouragers, all those things. It's useful when clients are rambling, right? So you're kind of breaking that cycle of them rambling. You are adding a question in that they have to answer directly. Okay. Also open questions, but here's another one that would be useful when clients are rambling is closed questions. And closed questions are the ones that just are yes or no or whatever, right? Or just one word responses. It helps clients clarify. They can provide structure and direction. Absolutely. If they're rambling, as this says, you want to get them focused and you want to have structure because, oh man, I'm just telling you, there's nothing worse than you guys sitting there and you're trying to it's like there's a tornado going on and, right in front of you and you're trying to grasp anything within these conversations. So these helping skills help you to minimize that and bring clarity, focus, and direction to your sessions. Very important. Okay. Can ask for example when clients are speaking in general or vague terms. Yeah, that's a powerful one. Is when somebody starts saying something, I'm like, can you give me an example of that? Or and then let them paint that picture for you. So if it's unclear to you, yeah, give me an example because you can even say this because I think in pictures. So paint this picture for me, or something like that, whatever helps them to not be so general or vague. Demonstrate that the helper is listening and interested. Because if you're asking them questions that are open-ended questions, those questions have to be pertaining to what you guys are talking about, right? So it shows that you are paying attention. Okay. So what do they sound like? So tell me more, or tell me about the last time you thought whatever. What are your memories about? Okay, tell me more about what's that like for you to think about. Okay. What do you mean by that? What do you think about that? What does X mean? Give me an example of that. What comes to mind when you think about X? I love this last one. What comes to mind when if I give you this word that you just told me about, what comes to mind? So they can give you more like you mentioned the need to feel in control. So what else comes into mind when you say the word control? Where else do you need control in your life? See, that's an open-ended question that can take you to, many directions, right? Because if you're asking, where else do you need control in your life? So you're looking for areas in their life where they need that, and then you can discuss those. Okay. Open questions, probe questions, thoughts, tips. So there's no right or wrong topics to explore and no right or wrong answers to questions. That's important to remember. So be supportive and encouraging. So when that says there's no right or wrong answers to those questions, it doesn't mean that those answers won't change for them later. That's their perception at the moment of what's happening in their life or whatever. No right or wrong. Now, do we want to change that perception or do they want to change it? If the answer is yes, then okay, we'll note this right now, but how do we help them to change, create that change in their life that they want? So it's by being supportive and encouraging. So I always say this all the time. I always put my hands like this and I say, it's a funnel. And here's kind of a good picture of it. So you got a funnel. We want to get down. We're going to start large and, funnel down to whatever's at the bottom of that funnel is the most important item. Okay. And it could even be, one question is, when did this first happen to you in your life? And you're going back to the very first time something happened, maybe something traumatic or whatever it is. So when was that first time? Because that's when it's going to have the most meaning, because it has colored all other areas of your life. Maybe just that one item has colored other areas of your life. Okay. Open questions, probes for thoughts, short and simple, one question at a time. Very important to keep that focus and to not fall into, because if they're all over the place, you don't want to be all over the place either. You want to model directness and simplicity, all those things. Focus on one part of the problem at a time. This is so important. So I use the whiteboard a lot, mainly because I got a terrible memory, right? So I want to remember everything that they've said. So I will go up to the whiteboard a lot and say, "Ooh, that was important." And I'll write that word or phrase or whatever it is that they said down, because I want to go back to that thing. And if they're veering off from that important word or phrase, I can point to that saying, this is what we're focusing on today, because they could be wandering around because of avoiding talking about what you guys are talking about. Think of your time together as a funnel. This is good. Starting at the surface and digging for the root emotion at the bottom. So whenever think of your time also as when you start at the beginning, it may be a big and a lot, but we're going to funnel down to what is the goal that we want to obtain at the end of this, and then did we reach that at the end of our session? Doesn't mean you have to reach a goal every time, because it may be one big goal that maybe it's anxiety, okay? And that's an overarching thing for their whole life. You're not going to end that in one session, okay? So don't put that pressure on yourself, but you can say, okay, here was one thing, and I want a conclusion about that one thing, or at least get close or whatever. And the reason why I say that is because you as a counselor want to feel there's progress, but guess who else does? The person sitting across from you, they want to feel progress too. So even just little chunks of progress, even when there's a big picture of issues, little chunks of progress gives them hope and encouragement and all those things. And you too. You're going to get that out of it. Tips: keep the focus on the client, of course, keep the focus on current thoughts. Yes. Even if they're about past events, current thoughts about past events. We are interested in their present emotions and their thoughts. So you can say, tell me your memories about X, right? When a client is describing current emotions that may be influenced by past experiences, tell me about those memories, about those experiences. Avoid why questions. Why do you think that is? And I just asked you a why question, I know, but why do you think that is? Why do we avoid why questions?
If they knew why, they probably wouldn't be coming to you.
Boom! That's a good one. Good job.
It might sound like you're accusing them of something as well.
Another good one. Gosh, you guys, man. You guys are good.
I'm sorry, I'm going to ruin it, Doug. I had the thought that popped in my mind is why ask why.
That's it.
I'm sorry.
Why, yeah, there you go. Why ask why? That's right. Yeah, two good ones there. Absolutely. And
But Doug, I have a question about that, because I was
Okay.
thinking many times, I think when we are in the phase of we are exploring to get to the insight, I think I do at least, in a why process, like why I am feeling this. I do this a lot of times, like I'm feeling unsettled, I'm having this emotion, why I'm doing, and I get to the root of this. Like I know now I found inside myself why I'm having this feeling. So I don't know, I was a little bit, I was thinking about that. I was like, I don't know, I think sometimes why are good questions, at least for me. So I just wanted to understand better. I got what they said, and I think that's great. But I don't know if there is any time that we can help them with ask them why questions to help them to understand why they are feeling that, what is the real root of the issue that they are having.
So let me ask you this. So how can you ask a why question in a different way? So think of a why question that you were just
Okay.
talking about. How could you ask it in a different way? I think the biggest thing is go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I'm thinking about myself because my experience that I told you, maybe I would ask myself when I have this feeling, and I do that sometimes, like trying to track my feeling. If okay, this feeling I had in this moment, and all these moments have something in common, and then I can find the root of the issue that sometimes is not really clear. It's not superficial, but then I go like, oh, okay, that's why I felt that way. So
Mhm.
when it helps me sometimes, I don't know.
Yeah, so me, I ask myself, why am I thinking this? I ask myself why questions all the time. Why? But I think it's if like somebody's sitting across me, I feel put on the spot if they go, why? To me, because then you know what? When somebody says that to me, I go, whoa, so then I get nervous and all these things in my mind goes
Okay.
some different directions. So it's almost like the pressure of it, or I'm feeling like they're shaming me or something, you know,
Okay.
um, like your parents, why did you do this? You know what I mean? So it's like, so it's almost like if you had that and you have you know what I'm saying? So, um, I think just looking for a different way to ask the same question, if that makes sense.
But a why question can often be asked as what was going on? When did you feel this way?
Yes.
You can just change the why to what or when or
Mhm.
how and get to the same baseline.
Mhm. Yeah, so all of these here, tell me about the last time you thought of that. Why did you think about that? So, or you could say, tell me about the last time you thought of it. What was that? You know, a lot of what, and then just like what Cindy
Mhm.
said, I guess. So, why are you having memories about these things? No, so it's like, what are your memories about these? So it kind of takes the um accusatory out of it. And not that you are accusing them of anything, but I just know that if anybody was mad at me or saying, you know, like as a parent, they go, why? You know, so
Yeah, I do, but with myself, it's just like a really deep exploring thing. It's like why it's not in an accusatory way, you know. It's like why I'm feeling that. I want to understand what's happening, and sometimes I do with other, you know, with friends. Like, why do you think that you were thinking about that, or why did you feel this
yeah.
way? Can you understand yourself? It's just something that I was thinking, but I understand that it can be intimidating and yeah, and there's other ways. Maybe that is a shortcut that we try to get to the point, and we need to be more aware
Mhm.
of their
I,
feelings.
I really like the using the word the do you mind or would you mind? Like, would you mind telling me about that? You know, because I feel like you're asking permission from
Mhm.
your client to be more
Mhm.
open. And if they don't want to share it, it's not the time for them to share it. But to me, asking like, do you mind sharing that to me? Or would you mind?
Mhm.
Like,
Nice.
you know,
Yeah, that's
to
a
me, it's
good
always
point.
that like asking permission. Because sometimes if you direct the question, like, what do you think of that? It kind of like come across as you're trying to force them to tell you. So by
Mhm.
asking the
Yeah.
do you mind or would you mind, to me, it's like I'm being courteous and respectful.
Yes.
How they're gonna
Mhm.
share the information to me and when they're able to share the information. So that's why I like using the word do you mind or would you mind. So
It's good.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, good conversation. Thanks for that question. Why'd you ask it? Just kidding.
Yes, because when I read in the book, I was thinking myself, I'm gonna ask you.
Yeah,
I'm gonna ask Doug about that.
that's good. Okay, so difficulties in using open questions, continue asking the same type of questions, probes repeatedly. So we don't want to do that, of course. Unless you're trying to get a specific answer and they're not answering it in that way, and you keep asking, but maybe you can ask it in a different way. Using only questions, probes, instead of interspersing them with other types of skills, right? So switching it up and all that, sounding more like an interview than a helping session.
That's what I was gonna ask, because you said not to use why questions, but what if you're trying to get them to a certain place where they will dive deeper? Like,
Yeah, that's what this
yeah, I
feels.
mean, because sometimes sometimes you ask all the stuff around it and they're like, yeah, you're not going there. And I think sometimes a pointed why might be like, oh, I never thought of why I did that or why,
Mhm.
So I guess I'm with you. I'm just I feel like also with the the why questions, I don't see anything wrong with it, but I guess that's not what we're supposed to do.
I think this is also hard with a kid because last night, even if like some kids, they just don't talk, like they won't talk, and so I think they were intimidated. Like the kid last night was telling me that she's so hungry. Like I'm just so hungry because it was like 6 o'clock, and she's like,
Yeah.
I'm just so hungry. And so that's why I find it easy for me when I started asking her the question in a way that, I said, do you mind telling me why? And then she kind of like started sharing. And then I said, would you mind if I asked you another question? And then she's like, answer me, okay. And then so that's how the conversation, because like when I was asking her like, what do you think? Or like, how did it happen or something like that, she was just like not responding to me, even when her mom was around. And then I asked the mom to leave the room, she was not responding. So then I started asking her, okay. So I told myself like I need to have a different approach in this because she is not talking. And so
Mhm.
then I started asking her the do you mind and would you mind? And so that kind of opened up a little bit. And then when her mom came back, I told the mom the would you mind and do you mind? And she's like, huh, that's interesting. And she was there. And so I shared that information to the mom. So yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, with kids, it's hard.
Oh, yeah. So here's one thing. So it says avoid them, right? It doesn't mean you don't have to. Just like what Jillian said, it's like
Yes, yeah.
if it's something like me, maybe sometimes you get at the end of your rope and you're like, I just want to know why, because you just get at the end of it.
Mhm.
You just ask because they're not giving you any other information. And so, oh, I'm just gonna go for this. Yeah, and then just ask. So it just says avoid. It doesn't mean that you have to not do that. I mean, you're going to avoid a lot of different things, but you're going to get a lot of different people in front of you.
Mhm.
Think of it this way. Look at when you have couples that come in, generally it's not both of them that want to be there. And one of them wants to feel better about the relationship. They both want to feel better about it, but one is going to feel accused, the other one's not going to feel accused. And the one that calls in is the one that's accusing, right? And the other one who doesn't want to be there is the one that's not calling in. Okay. So you're going to get a lot of stuff of avoidance and all kinds of things in couples counseling. So you might get at the end of your rope sometimes with some people and just then you're going to say why, or something. You'll be more
Mhm.
more pointed, I guess, in your approach. So
Mhm.
okay.
Doug,
Thank you.
you hit
Yeah.
me with the idea that you're being put on the spot.
When you say why, yeah, you could.
When you said you felt like, if somebody asked you why, because I kind of had similar thoughts, like, yeah, sometimes I want to know why. But whenever you said, like, if somebody else was asking me that, I'd feel put on the spot.
Yeah.
And especially as a guy, I'm going to shut down anyway. That's my
Yeah.
go-to. I'm going to be done. So as soon as you start asking me why, and if I feel like the spotlight's on me, I'm done. And in fact,
Absolutely.
when you said that, it actually made me remember a therapy session where the therapist basically told me why I was doing it, and I completely rejected it. He was right, but it took years for me to accept it because, like you said, I was put on the spot, and I was gonna nope. I'm gonna avoid that. That can't be it at all. That was
Yes.
it.
I want everybody to hear what he just said, because you are going to get that in there. So I'm putting Charlie on the spot here, but you're going to get that from people. It's because and Charlie, you can say how you took it, but what I'm going to say is people will do those things, like he said, to avoid, or it's like, I don't want that to be my reality, or whatever it is. So I just
It was
want you
me
to,
coming to that conclusion myself, and I was never going to do that with someone else telling me that's, as soon as they told me that, I was like, nope, that can't be it.
yeah,
And then in my mind, I was going to reject that every time. It took me a long time to accept that was right, but
yeah,
I wish he would let me come to that conclusion myself.
yeah. Well, now you have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the funny thing about a story that I have is somebody came into our church, these things were happening. I understood the personality type, and then I was talking to a pastor, and I was talking to him afterwards, and I go, he's X. And then I said, this is what's going to happen. As you work with them, these are the things that are going to happen with you and him. And so 6 months down the line, I just talked to him a little bit ago, and he goes, everything that you said, he did. I'm like, I know, because I just seen that personality type so many times. I understand what's going to happen, in that. So then this is how you work with that, so you have to put up boundaries, you have to do these things. So things are going to happen within situations, and you can't make people change, right? Even though you know what that change needs to be, and they know what the change needs to be, that may not happen. So remember, when I talk about the change, what do you call it? The stages of change, right? Pre-contemplation, contemplation, was it planning, action, maintenance, right? So people get stuck after they understand what in the between pre-contemplation and contemplation, they get stuck in that because they know the pain to change, or maybe it's not just the pain, it's the unknown of changing that scares them, right? And so we don't want to go into that realm, and I will push back, or I will do these things. And it's not an indictment on you as a counselor because they didn't. So you just think of it as in your own Christian life, you have planted the seeds of salvation in many people's hearts, hopefully, right? And that doesn't mean that you're going to bring each and every one of them to salvation. That just means that you've planted that seed. Others may water it and grow it, and they come to salvation with them. Who cares? Who cares who brings them to salvation, as long as they get there? So anyway, I would just thinking about that in counseling. I don't care if I'm the one that but I planted those seeds with them, and I made them think about stuff, and then maybe it changed their life in some way. So anyway, I just want to give you hope and encouragement along that, and that you don't need to see fully changed lives in front of you, right? And they may never change, and that's choices. Okay. Anyway, just want to give you encouragement to that in that direction. Okay, closed questions are, so you request a 1 or 2 word answer back, and they're asked together specific information. So it's not a broad open, you're wanting a specific answer back to them, and you ask it to clarify. It's important during a crisis situation. So if they're suicidal, whatever, are you, do you have a plan? Do you have means? That's pointed and it's yes or no, right? Appropriate for certain interview situations. Okay. So what do they look like? Is that what happened? Yes or no, right? Does that sound right to you? Yes or no? What was your test grade? Right? How old were you when your parents got divorced? Where are you in the birth order? So it's pointed, direct questions where you just want specific information back. Okay. The limited role in closed questions. So helping is not an interview when you're using closed questions. Helping is not about diagnosing and treating clients, it's about facilitating healing. Okay. Helpers do not typically need to gather much specific information. If information is desired, we'll just go on. So closed question tips. Be empathic, empathetic, and inviting manner. So say those in ways that invites them to answer those questions. Ask one question at a time. Same guidelines apply to using in open questions. So difficulty using closed questions, okay? Using too many of them. So remember what it said, we want to mix everything up, all of our skills. We want to mix them all up. Asking closed questions to satisfy your own curiosity. Yeah, because you may be curious about something and it doesn't, you just want the answer, but it doesn't pertain to them, their change. Difficulties in closed questions being condescending or trying to coerce the client into responding in a particular way, just like what we talked about earlier, leading. So that you'll just think if you have a judge in the room with you, oh, that's a leading question. You know, the other lawyer is going to say, I object, right? Leading him. Okay, open versus closed. Open questions ask the client to explore whatever comes to mind. Closed questions ask for specific information at that time. Okay, let me see here. Try to determine whether the question can be made more open. Did you get an A on the test? So that's specific. If we want to make it open, how was the test for you? So if you have person like what Jillian was talking about, they could repeat back to with one answer to you. Fine. You know, teenager, fine, whatever. Those are their two favorite words. How many siblings do you have? Tell me about your family. See the difference in that? Okay, let's see what else. Okay, skill recommendations, especially for as you practice tonight or whenever it is. Use mostly restatements with sprinkles of open questions and probes. And potentially some closed questions in there if you want to start getting more direct. Use restatements when clients are exploring thoroughly and you want to encourage them to keep going, right? And then use your minimal encouragers on top of that if you want them to keep going, your head nods and so on. Use open questions, probes, thoughts for when the client seems to need more direction. Oh, so here we go. Don't be afraid to make a mistake or show that you are human, okay? Let me see here. Okay. From man's perspective, God could never empathize with man's trials and tests until he had identified himself with our humanity. This God did in Christ, right? So what is true of our Lord is also true of human counselors. I have the greatest difficulty responding positively to preachers who give the distinct impression that they have all their problems taken care of, right? You know, and that all that remains is to tend to my problems, okay? The kind of person who seemingly has no problem is not the one with whom I wish to share mine. Isn't that good? How can such a person possibly understand my problems if they haven't figured out that they have their own problems and they're processing their own, right? This is one of the greatest hindrances to those who are looked at as professionals. Professionals often appear to live in a kind of sterile world without troubles and trials. We have to present ourselves in front of like we're the know-it-all and don't have any problems. Forget that. How can a person help me who doesn't know what I am going through? That's huge. Are you struggling in your Christian life? Do you experience frustration, failure, and defeat? God is not only working to bring about your sanctification, but he may also be equipping you to help others by what you've gone through, what you're going through now, and so on. He's absolutely equipping you. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and God of all comfort, who comforts us in all of our afflictions, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted with God. Okay. Simon, Simon, behold, Satan has demanded permission to sift you like wheat, but I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And you, when once you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. So saying, you're going through all of this so that others who are going through that, that's why, I look at AA and stuff like that. It is so needed for people, is because all of those people have gone through that situation, and they can help and understand that if you're just quitting or whatever, and you're white knuckling or whatever, it's not going to work. You need community. No one can identify with men who fail better than those who have failed. Yeah. Nobody can identify with somebody who, other than those who have failed before. No one can share God's grace who has not found it. Let us be honest and open about our failures so that others may not be intimidated by us and fail to seek help from us. Yeah, I had a boss one time, and I think I've said this to you before. It's like, I don't care if you make a mistake, it's what you do with that mistake that I care about. So go out and make all kinds of mistakes. And that's what I tell everybody who comes through as an intern where we're at, is fail miserably. Just fail. That's okay. Failure is okay. Because you're not failing them, you're building yourself up for the next 1,000, 10,000 people, whatever you're going to do. Okay. I do want to get to, so it's 7:13. I do want to get to at least a couple of these videos so you can see Carl Rogers in action. Now, remember, this is secular type stuff, but he's using helping skills. He's kind of the inventor of the helping skills. Now, Carl Rogers is a different person. The dude is gruff. I mean, you're going to see this, and I'm like, he scares me even now. This is from the 1960s. He scares me even now just because of the way he is. But anyway, I'll let you kind of be the judge of all that. So let me, do you guys see like a little video? Okay. And I got to turn the sound on for sure. So here. Okay, let me play this video. Might keep it small.
Psychotherapy is such a personal and private process that it is a mystery to most people who have never gone through it. The following series is a unique effort that allows us to sit in on what is ordinarily a very private therapeutic experience. An actual patient was courageous enough and considerate enough to allow herself to be photographed while actually engaged in therapy with 3 different therapists. Thus, we are allowed the privilege of seeing and feeling what really transpires. A film series like this, in which 3 therapists, distinguished by their different orientations, share their therapeutic endeavors, has never been made before. We therefore wish to express our gratitude to Gloria, the patient, and to her therapists for allowing us to share in their therapeutic adventure. This series will be divided into 3 separate films. In the first film, we see Dr. Carl Rogers, founder of Client-Centered Therapy, interviewing Gloria. In film number 2,
I'll just skip ahead.
From my own years of therapeutic experience, I've come to feel that if I can create the proper climate, the proper relationship, the proper conditions, a process of therapeutic movement will almost inevitably occur in my client. You might ask, what is this climate? What are these conditions? Will they exist in the interview with the woman I'm about to talk with, whom I've never seen before? Well, let me try to describe very briefly what these conditions are as I see them. First of all, one question is, can I be real in the relationship? This has come to have an increasing amount of importance to me over the years. I feel that genuineness is another way of describing the quality I would like to have. I like the term congruence, by which I mean that what I'm experiencing inside is present in my awareness and comes out through my communication. In a sense, when I have this quality, I'm all in one piece in the relationship. There's another word that describes it for me. I feel that in the relationship, I would like to have a transparency. I would be quite willing for my client to see all the way through me, that there would be nothing hidden. And when I'm real in this fashion that I'm trying to describe, then I know that my own feelings will often bubble up into awareness and be expressed, but be expressed in ways that won't impose themselves on my client. Then the second question I would have is, will I find myself prizing this person, caring for this person? I certainly don't want to pretend a caring that I don't feel. In fact, if I dislike my client persistently, I feel it's better that I should express it. But I know that the process of therapy is much more likely to occur, and constructive change is much more likely, if I feel a real spontaneous prizing of this individual with whom I'm working. A prizing of this person as a separate individual. You can call that quality acceptance, you can call it caring, you can call it a non-possessive love, if you wish. I think any of those terms tend to describe it. I know that the relationship will prove more constructive if it's present. Then the third quality, will I be able to understand the inner world of this individual from the inside? Will I be able to see it through her eyes? Will I be able to be sufficiently sensitive to move around inside the world of her feelings so that I know what it feels like to be her, so that I can sense not only the surface meanings, but some of the meanings that lie somewhat underneath the surface. I know that if I can let myself sensitively and accurately enter into her world of experience, then change and therapeutic movement are much more likely. Well, suppose I am fortunate and that I do experience some of these attitudes in the relationship, what then? Well, then a variety of things are likely to happen, both from my clinical experience and from our research investigations, we find that if attitudes of the sort that I've described are present, then quite a number of things will happen. She'll explore some of her feelings and attitudes more deeply. She's likely to discover some hidden aspects of herself that she wasn't aware of previously. Feeling herself prized by me, it's quite possible she'll come to prize herself more. Feeling that some of her meanings are understood by me, then she can more readily perhaps listen to herself, listen to what's going on within her own experience, listen to some of the meanings she hasn't been able to catch before. And perhaps if she senses a realness in me, she'll be able to be a little more real within herself. I suspect there will be a change in the manner of her expression. At least this has been my experience in other instances. From being rather remote from her experiencing, remote from what's going on within her, it's possible that she'll move toward more immediacy of experiencing, that she will be able to sense and express what's going on in her in the immediate moment. From being disapproving of herself, it's quite possible she will move toward a greater degree of acceptance of herself. From somewhat of a fear of relating, she may move toward being able to relate more directly and to encounter me more directly. From construing life in somewhat rigid black and white patterns, she may move toward more tentative ways of construing her experience and of seeing the meanings in it. From a locus of evaluation which is outside of herself, it's quite possible she will move toward recognizing a greater capacity within herself for making judgments and drawing conclusions. So those are some of the changes that we have taken.
Okay. Let's go to the next one real quick.
Now I'm nervous, but I feel more comfortable.
Then we may be able to see some of these changes in this client, even though I know in advance that our contact is going to be very brief. Good morning.
Hello,
I'm
Dr.
Dr. Rogers. You must be Gloria.
Yes, I am.
Let's have this chair. Now, we have half an hour together, and I really don't know what we'll be able to make of it, but I hope we can make something of it. I'd be glad to know whatever concerns you.
Well, right now I'm nervous, but I feel more comfortable the way you're talking in a low voice, and I don't feel like you'll be so harsh on me. But,
I hear the tremor in your voice, so we are on these.
well, the main thing I want to talk to you about is I'm just newly divorced, and I had gone in therapy before, and I felt comfortable when I left, and all of a sudden now the biggest change is adjusting to my single life. And one of the things that bother me the most is especially men and having men to the house and how it affects the children. And the biggest thing the thing that keeps coming to my mind I want to tell you about is I have a daughter 9 who at one time I felt I had a lot of emotional problems. And I wish I could stop shaking. And I'm real conscious of things affecting her. I don't want her to get upset. I don't want to shock her. I want so bad for her to accept me. And we're real open with each other, especially about sex. And the other day she saw a girl that was single but pregnant, and she asked me all about, can girls get pregnant if they're single? And the conversation was fine, and I wasn't at ease at all with her until she asked me if I'd ever made love to a man since I've left her daddy, and I lied to her. And ever since that, it keeps coming up to my mind because I feel so guilty lying to her because I never lie and I want her to trust me. And I almost want an answer from you. I want you to tell me if it will affect her wrong if I told her the truth or what.
And it's this concern about her and the fact that you really aren't, that this open relationship that has existed between you now you feel is kind of...
Yes, I feel like I have to be on guard about that because I remember when I was a little girl, when I first found out my mother and father made love, it was dirty and terrible, and I didn't like her anymore for a while. And I don't want to lie to Pammy either, and I don't know.
I sure wish I could give you the answer as to what you should tell her.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
Because what you really want is an answer.
I want to especially know if it would affect her, if I was completely honest and open with her, or if it would affect her because I lied. I feel like it's bound to make a strain because I lied to her.
Sort of feel she'll suspect that, or she will know something's not quite
I
right.
feel that
in the
inside she'll distrust me, yes. And also I thought, well, gee, what about when she gets a little older and she finds herself in touchy situations? She probably wouldn't want to admit it to me because she thinks I'm so good and so sweet. And yet I'm afraid she could think I'm really a devil. And I want so bad for her to accept me. And I don't know how much a 9-year-old can take.
And really, both alternatives concern you, that she might think you're too good or better than you really are.
Yes.
And she might think that you're worse than you are.
Not worse than I am. I don't know if she can accept me the way I am. I think I paint a picture that I'm all sweet and motherly, and I'm a little ashamed of my shady side, too.
I see. It really cuts a little deeper. If she really knew you, could she accept you?
This is what I don't know, yes. I don't want her to turn away from me. And I don't even know how I feel about it, because there are times when I feel so guilty, like when I have a man over. I even try to make a special setup so that if I were ever alone with him, the children would never catch me and that sort of thing. Because I'm real leery about it. And yet I also know I have these desires.
So it's quite clear. It isn't only her problem or the relationship with her, it's in you as well.
And my guilt, yeah, I feel guilty so often.
What can I accept myself as doing? And,
yes.
And you realize that you set up sort of subterfuges so as to make sure that you're not caught or something. You realize that you are acting from guilt, is it?
Yes. I don't like I would like to feel comfortable with whatever I do. If I choose not to tell Pammy the truth, to feel comfortable that she can't handle it, and I don't. I want to be honest, and yet I feel there are some areas that I don't even accept.
And if you can't accept them in yourself, how could you possibly be comfortable in telling them to her?
Right.
And yet, as you say, you do have these desires and you do have your feelings, but you don't feel good about them.
Right. And I have a feeling you're just going to sit there and let me stew in it, and I want more. I want you to help me get rid of my guilt feeling. If I can get rid of my guilt feeling about lying or going to bed with a single man, any of that, just so I can feel more comfortable.
And I guess I'd like to say, no, I don't want to let you just stew in your feelings, but on the other hand, I also feel that this is the kind of very private thing that I couldn't possibly answer for you, but I sure as anything will try to help you work toward your own answer. I don't know whether that makes any sense to you, but I mean it.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. You sound like you mean it. But I don't know where to go. I don't begin to know where to go. I thought that I'd pretty well worked over most of my guilt, and now that this is coming up, I'm disappointed in myself. I really am. I like it when I feel that no matter what I do, even if it's against my own morals or my upbringing, that I can still feel good about me. And now I don't. Like, there's a girl at work who sort of mothers me. And I think she thinks I'm all sweet. And I sure don't want to show my more ornery, devilish side with her. I want to be sweet. And it's so hard for me to, this all seems so new again. And it's so disappointing.
Yeah, I get the disappointment that here, a lot of these things you thought you'd worked through, and now the guilt and a feeling that only a part of you is acceptable to anybody else.
Yes.
That keeps coming out. I guess I do catch the real deep puzzlement that you feel as to what the hell shall I do? What can I do?
Yes, and you know what I can find, Doctor, is that everything I start to do, that impulse, it seems natural to tell Pammy or to go out on a date or something, I'm comfortable until I think how I was affected as a child. And the minute that comes up, then I'm all haywire. Like, I want to be a good mother so bad, and I feel like I am a good mother. But then there's those little exceptions, like my guilt with working. I want to work, and it's so fun having extra money. I like to work nights. The minute I think I'm not being real good to the children or giving them enough time, then I start feeling guilty again. Then that's when it's a, what do they call it? A double bind. That's just what it feels like. I want to do this, and it feels right, but after all, I'm not being a good mother, and I want to be both. I'm becoming more and more aware of what a perfectionist I am. That's what it seems like. I want to be so perfect. Either I want to become perfect in my standards or not have that need anymore.
Or I guess I hear it a little differently, that what you want is to seem perfect. That it means it's a matter of great importance to you to be a good mother, and you want to seem to be a good mother even if some of your actual feelings differ from that. Does that catch
Gee,
you?
I don't feel like I'm saying that. No, that isn't what I feel, really. I want to approve of me always, but my actions won't let me. I want to approve of me. I
I
think...
realize you, all right, let me, because I'd like to understand that. You sound as though your actions are kind of outside of you. You want to approve of you, but what you do somehow won't let you approve of yourself.
Right. Like, I feel that I can approve of myself regarding, for example, my sex life. This is the big thing. If I really fell in love with a man and I respected him and I adored him, I don't think I'd feel so guilty going to bed with him, and I don't think I'd have to make up any excuses to the children because they could see my natural caring for him. But when I have the physical desire and I'll say, oh, well, why not? And I want to anyway, then I feel guilty afterwards. I hate facing the kids. I don't like looking at myself, and I rarely enjoy it. And this is what I mean. If the circumstances would be different, I don't think I'd feel so guilty because I'd feel right about it.
Yeah, I guess I hear you saying if what I was doing when I went to bed with a man was really genuine and full of love and respect and so on, I wouldn't feel guilty in relation to Pam. I wouldn't, I really would be comfortable about the situation.
That's how I feel, yes. And I know that sounds like I want a perfect situation, but that is how I feel. And in the meantime, I can't stop these desires. I've tried that also. I've tried saying, okay, I don't like myself when I do that, so I won't do it anymore. But then I resent the children. I think, why should they stop me from doing what I want? And it's really not that bad.
But I guess I heard you saying, too, that it isn't only the children.
Okay. What content did you see, like helping skills?
Yeah.
Restatements.
Yeah. A lot of it,
Seemed
right?
like- yeah, it seemed like his whole goal is just to understand, like, say this in another way. Is this what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. So there was a couple of times, I mean, I think two, just within that 9-10 minutes of him saying something, and she's like, no, that's not it at all. Right.
Yeah.
But it may
That
have
was-
been
yeah.
it, right? And maybe she's avoiding, or she's doesn't want it to be that. So she's like, no, that's not it at all. Because I think you'll find later in the next couple of videos that it does move to that. But it's like you have this guilt and you have this shame, and and you're doing things out of the character that you don't want in your life, right? And then you've got your daughter, and you're showing her a different side of your character than what you want her to see. And there's this shame that's going along with this, right? So he's kind of saying those in terms. But yeah, a lot of helping skills there. I mean, he's the one that kind of came up with all these, but he used a lot of helping skills. And one part I liked was he goes, she'll ask him, what do I do? And he's like, how could I possibly tell you what to do? I'm not you. you know, so, but I like it. She's like going, see how he was using a softer voice. Because I said, when he's explaining something, he's like, seems really gruff and everything, but then he gets in there and he's like really toned down and inviting and things like that too. So that she says, oh, your low voice soothes me and makes me feel comfortable and safe and all those things. So,
Doug, I have a question. If I'm not mistaken, he was the one that brought up the word guilty.
yes.
at some point, I think he told her, like, you realize that you are acting by guilt.
Yeah.
He was trying to, because it kind of an answer that he gave her, but I think it was a way that, because she was rambling and talking about the same thing, and I think he
Mhm.
was just trying to help her to get to the point.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's correct.
So remember, we talk about funnel. I always want you to picture a funnel all the time. So they started at the top here, and he heard her whole story, and then he's catching all of these little small things that she's saying, and it's all leading to a couple of different words: guilt and shame. Right? So
Mhm.
well, then maybe, if we get down to those things, now we know that we work on shame and character and all of these things. If you don't want to do those things, then we don't do those things, right? Because, so it comes down to, maybe she's even saying, I want to feel loved. I'm a single woman. Maybe, who knows how the first relationship ended. I'm the single woman. I want to feel loved. So I'm doing things with this person that I don't want to do. And then there's shame involved and guilt and all of these things.
As Christian, I mean, I know this wasn't Christian by any sense, but as a Christian counselor, my immediate thought was, okay, well, when she's like, I want you to tell me what to do. I mean, I wanted to insert, well, let's go to the Bible and see what God says about the lifestyle that you're living. But yet that's not where some of our clients are going to be. So
Yeah.
at what point would you say, well, let's see what God has to say about it?
Yeah, and I think it's always going to depend on the person, right? Are they open to it? Are they ready? Because then if they're open to it, you can almost immediately go to those things, right? But for say it's this person and she's feeling this guilt and shame and stuff, I want to get down to what the core is. What are you feeling at the core? And then after I've gotten to that point, then kind of going, okay, so what? Because I want her to know that God loves her regardless. Do we need to change your lifestyle? Absolutely. So what does God say about? But I want her to know God says, I love you, through this, because shame is, a powerful emotion, and you don't want to lose her in that shame by going to scripture and say, God says you're wrong, blah, blah, blah. You want to love on her, get her to a spot of, now this is what God says about, having shame, and you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So,
It seems like though she would be right for that, because she
mhm.
seems like, to me, it's already a conviction there.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I could see eventually get going there with her, the scriptures.
Yeah, and I think that's all part of the therapeutic alliance that you build with them, because you understand, you want to ask questions around what is your spiritual life and things like that too, so that you can see how readily available they are to either going direct to it, or I have to do these things that you don't feel shame from scripture, you know what I'm saying?
I think it's helpful to ask them the definition of what guilt and shame, like
Yeah,
what they understand the word guilt and shame, because through that, then
absolutely.
you will understand what their worldview, like, okay, how do they define the word, and then you kind of understand, like, okay, she's ready to, if she's not Christian, then you'll be able to share the Bible, because you don't want to share the Bible verse to a person that does not believe in God. So I think have them define the word in their own words. I think, to me, that would make me understand, okay, this person is ready to hear the word of God,
Mhm.
and the worldview that this person have, that kind of thing, because every person have a different definition
Mhm.
of a word. Like, yeah, last night I asked the woman, like, what does healthy to you looks like?
Yes, that's good.
And then she was rumbling and rumbling, and I'm like, that's interesting. that you define that word like that, because to me this is what it looks like. And that kind of made her think. And so it was really good sometimes to have them define the words on their own words.
That's good.
Mhm.
That's really good.
I have a question, Doug, if you
Yeah.
don't mind. I really appreciated what Cindy and Jolene were saying, and this kind of combines both of them to a degree. For a little bit of clarification, I guess. Would it be accurate to say that like client-centered approach probably is more applicable to the exploration phase more so than it would be like the insight challenging kind of phase, whereas like the things that like Cindy and Jolene are bringing up would be more, okay, now I kind of understand the context, now I understand what's going on, now let's talk about the distinctions between, because I had the same initial thought as Cindy and I had similar language I typed out. And then as Jolene's talking, I'm like, okay, I think this is maybe the distinction here. Is that an accurate way to like understand that? It's like, okay, you know, because other solutions are coming to my mind too, you know, addressing her source of authority and other limitation. And is that due to the limitations of client-centered therapy being maybe primary? I don't know if I'm understanding that correctly or communicating that correctly, but
So no, and I think I know where you're going. So to me, client-centered is a theory, right? So that means that you can use it the whole way through if you wanted to. To me, now this is coming from my own view, it is a great starting point. It's a great foundation to build, to layer other things on, like EFT or something like that. So I'm going to use all of these skills throughout. So all the head nodding, minimal, you know, encouragers, all of those things throughout my whole thing. Now, and then open-ended questions and all of that stuff too. So that's part of any theory, really. So, but I want to get so good at these skills, these minimal encouragers, to build that therapeutic alliance. That's what I think this is for. Once that is established and I know what direction I need to go, then I can add a different theory. Now, if it's anxiety or phobia or something, so I'm going to use CBT in some form or fashion, right, to go and use to keep the foundation going of the skills, but use the tools and everything of CBT. Or if it's couples, whatever, EFT, whatever it takes, DBT for people who are experiencing trauma or whatever. So I love that question. That's great, because it is. I think it's great during the exploration phase, but I would even say it's more importantly used to build the therapeutic alliance, but it can be used through the whole thing. Obviously, he that's all he would do is just those
right.
things.
Yeah,
But
I guess that's where I'm like, it doesn't seem like it should be used exclusively.
yeah,
Especially since we hold to a biblical worldview, right?
Yeah.
Because the thought that I was having along the lines of what Jolene and Cindy were saying was like, okay, so if all I did the entire session was just guide her to whatever she comes up with, the conclusion she may come up with is, well, I should just cheat on my boyfriend every time and sleep with whoever I want to, right? But she's still going to end up being miserable because it's not aligned with the reality of how God established her to live.
absolutely.
And my responsibility is to guide them towards living well. I'm not going to be able to do that fully if I'm not also aligning their way of thinking and way of living with reality.
Absolutely.
That's,
Yeah.
I guess, where my point of contention was struggling with. Is that a fair way to say it? Jolene saying,
Yes.
I think,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And
No, you're right. Yeah.
yeah, so I think so too. But I think you're right about it's great in the exploration stage and everything. But I guess I think of it a different way as a foundation. So something you can always fall back on when you get stuck, or maybe even need to change. Go from EFT to CBT, and for some reason, to anyway, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. As a skill underlying current almost.
Yes. Yes.
Everything else. Okay. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
I feel like with the theories that we learn, you know, from the class, like it was really helpful for me, but also like I did not think of it while I was talking to the client because you
Yeah.
can't, you know, it's basically like they're going to talk and you're trying to listen to them. So I told myself, was the first client, I was like, okay, what am I going to use here? I was so in tune of like, I should use what I learned. But then as I was doing that, I was so lost. I find myself like, what I'm going to do. So then with my second and third client, I told myself, okay, I'm really going to just be listening here. And then I'm going to worry about what I'm going to use later. And it was really helpful for me to be just, because I find myself being by myself, just true to myself and not trying to be what we're learning here. Like, you're not trying to be professional. Like, you know, you're trying to be like to yourself and be true. And so they actually said thank you after that, because they're like, I can relate, you know, especially when I said I can relate to you in that emotion as well. And so that was really helpful for them to open up more. I don't know, but
No, that's good. And so how I would do it is have your session and then go back and say, what could I have done differently? Not better, just differently. And then sprinkle in some more, right? And so even if I improve 0.1% each session, it's on the way. You know, you're moving in the right direction of adding the skills. I had a person I did supervision with this week, and I just said, I said, here's what I see out of you. You're being every time we talk, you're being way too hard on yourself. Just relax, have those conversations. It's gonna be okay. Just keep using these skills. And I'm telling you, and I've said that probably the first 3 or 4 weeks of their internship or practicum, and now they are relaxing in it because they're seeing, okay, these skills are working and they're becoming second nature rather than being forced. Jillian saying, because I think she's feeling like I have to force these on. They'll become second nature as you move forward. Just keep trying new things.
Yeah, and I don't know if it helps that I had 3 clients back to back. I was so nervous about it, but I think it was actually helpful because then you can differentiate what did I do in the first, second, and third. And then like after I was driving on my way home, because I have 45 minutes drive, I had to think through it. I'm like, okay, I should have done that. I will not do this again. And then I'm going to add this again. It was kind of like debriefing myself basically after the 3 sessions. So
it's good. Good job. All right. Anybody else have any questions or anything? Observations, thoughts?
Okay, I did want to know, I saw him using a lot of minimal encouragement.
Yes, he sure did, didn't he? A lot of head nods. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, he's good at it, obviously. So, okay. Thank you for this. Let me kind of stop